A Japan Airlines plane catches fire at Haneda Airport in Tokyo. All people on board safely evacuated. The death toll from yesterday's earthquake in Japan rises to almost 50. And the trial of Jimmy Lai resumes at the West Kowloon Court. Hello and welcome to TVB News. A Japan Airlines aircraft carrying almost 380 passengers caught fire as it landed at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. The plane, an Airbus A350, was soon engulfed in flames as it sat on the runway earlier this evening. All 379 crew and passengers were evacuated from JAL Flight 516, arriving from Shin Chitose Airport in Hokkaido before the aircraft was overwhelmed by the blaze. Nippon TV reported that the passenger plane was possibly involved in a collision with a Coast Guard aircraft after the landing. Nazvi Karim with more.
This is believed to be the moment Japan Airlines Flight 516 arriving at Haneda Airport caught fire after a reported runway collision with a Coast Guard aircraft. Later, as it sat at the airport, firefighters were battling what appeared to be a localized fire just above the wing of the Airbus A350. But the fire quickly spread. A single fire truck trying to reach the flames was helpless, though by this time all 379 crew and passengers were believed to have been safely evacuated. Several minutes later, the entire aircraft was engulfed in flames. The blaze wrapped itself around the body of the aircraft while violently spitting out bright yellow flames and sparks. As the fire peeled away the plane's exterior, fire crews sprayed foam in a desperate bid to stem the blaze. The plane eventually crumbled as thick white smoke poured out of the skeletal remains of the fuselage. Reports say the Japan Coast Guard plane that collided with Flight 516 may have been a fixed-wing Bombardier Dash 8 aircraft, Flight MA722. The incident comes a day after parts of Japan were hit by a massive earthquake that produced several aftershocks. In fact, the Coast Guard said its plane was on its way to Niigata to deliver aid to the quake-hit Noto Peninsula. Media reports that the fire started at the landing gear and it was around an hour between the incident and the entire plane going up in flames. The Japanese Coast Guard said the pilot of MA722 had escaped, but 5 crew members are missing. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
A series of powerful earthquakes that hit central Japan have left at least 48 people dead and damaged thousands of buildings, vehicles, and boats. Officials warn that more quakes could follow. Aftershocks continued to shake Ishikawa Prefecture and nearby areas a day after a magnitude 7.6 temblor slammed the area on Monday afternoon. Officials say 16 people were seriously injured, while damage to homes was so great that it could not immediately be assessed.
This is the moment the dangerous and powerful earthquake struck, rocking this train platform, violently shaking homes. Residents inside grabbing on to whatever they could as the ground beneath them shook. At this store, people fled as food tumbled from shelves. The quake also sparking this massive fire in Wajima. Tonight, officials say at least 4 people are dead as rescuers search the rubble for more people trapped in their homes and under buildings. The magnitude 7.6 quake, the strongest of several to strike the western region of Japan.
Everybody was panicked that time.
Wow. Johnny Wu shot this video in Nagano, where he was visiting to snowboard.
You can see all the snow from the electric wire goes down and also from the roof go down.
Soon after the earthquake, Japan issued a major tsunami warning with initial fears that waves could top 16 feet. Nearly 100,000 people told to evacuate and seek higher ground. That warning now downgraded. But officials are urging people to stay away for their own safety. It was the first major tsunami warning since the massive 2011 quake and tsunami that killed nearly 20,000 people. Tonight, the nation now facing the aftermath of another powerful quake. Tens of thousands are without power, and roads in the region are cut off. This woman documenting the damage in her neighborhood. We're in serious trouble, she says. Please come help us.
Here in Hong Kong, some travel agencies say they will rearrange travelers' itineraries or cancel designated tour groups in the quake-affected area. Tour agency WWPKG says it will cancel all tour groups traveling to the city of Wajima in Ishikawa Prefecture this month to ensure the safety of Hong Kong travelers. Tourists can choose either a refund or a tour group switch. Meanwhile, EGL Tours noted they will rearrange the 16 tours originally heading towards Ishikawa Prefecture and its neighboring regions. The Israeli military has confirmed that it is pulling thousands of troops out of the Gaza Strip. The move could pave the way for a new long-term phase of lower-intensity fighting against Hamas. Though fewer Israeli boots will be on the ground in Gaza, residents say there is no let-up in airstrikes. Authorities say almost 22,000 people have been killed since October 7th, when Hamas raided Israel, resulting in the deaths of 1,200 people. Nazvi Karim has more.
Israeli soldiers near the Gaza border listen to stories from a 95-year-old war veteran who is visiting troops to offer support. These men are taking a break from the war in Gaza, but are expected to return to the front lines in a couple of days. For several thousand soldiers, though, their next stop is home. Israel says 5 brigades will be withdrawn from the war theater, with the soldiers returning to their jobs, businesses and universities in a bid to revive a war-battered economy. Israeli officials says those same units will also be freed up to respond to any escalation in Israel's northern border with Lebanon. Since October 7th, Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon have exchanged fire almost daily. Hezbollah says 4 of its fighters were killed on Monday by an Israeli raid on a home in southern Lebanon. The United States, which is pressuring Israel to curtail the intensity of its military assault on Gaza, says the troop withdrawal is part of a new phase of its de-escalation. The U.S. says the Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier, which was sent to the Mediterranean Sea after Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7th, will return to its home port in Virginia. Israel says it is moving on to phase 3 of its war after weeks of airstrikes and a ground invasion. It is now launching localized mopping-up operations in northern Gaza. The goal is to completely wipe out Hamas and cripple its ability to govern the coastal enclave after the war. But Hamas fighters remain a major threat, emerging from tunnels and conducting hit-and-run raids on Israeli tanks and soldiers. Hamas says it killed 15 Israeli soldiers on Monday after triggering explosions in a minefield in Gaza City. Israel says 174 of its soldiers have been killed in the ground assault. Reports cite Gaza residents as saying tanks have been withdrawn from some areas, but the airstrikes remain as intense as ever. At least 15 people were killed and more than 20 injured when a missile struck a house in the central Gaza city of Deir al-Balah. The dead and the wounded were taken to the nearby Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital. Gaza's health ministry said on Monday that 156 people had been killed the previous day. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Iran's Al-Borz warship has entered the Red Sea, according to the country's semi-official Tasnim news agency. Tasnim did not give details of the Al-Borz's mission, but said Iranian warships had been operating in open waters to secure shipping routes, combat piracy, and carry out other tasks since 2009. This comes amid tensions in the Red Sea. For more than a month, Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen have attacked ships they say are either linked to Israel or heading to Israeli ports. Mohammed Abdul Salam, the Houthis' chief negotiator and spokesman, met with Iran's foreign minister in Tehran on Monday. Iran's official news agency IRNA said the foreign minister applauded the Houthis over their powerful stance in supporting the oppressed people of Palestine. The attacks on commercial vessels in the Red Sea have scared off some of the world's top shipping companies and oil giants. Iran's Supreme Court on Monday struck down a controversial law passed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's right-wing government that rolled back some of the High Court's powers. The law was part of a broader judicial overhaul proposed by Netanyahu and his coalition of religious and nationalist partners. It sparked large protests in the months before Hamas's attack and raised concern in the West on Israel's democratic principles. The new legislation brought before the court had removed one, but not all, of the tools the Supreme Court has for quashing government and ministers' decisions. Back here at home, the trial of former media tycoon Jimmy Lai resumed today, and he pleaded not guilty to 3 national security charges. This is the 4th day of the high-profile trial of Lai, the founder of the now-defunct Apple Daily. Mimo Singhai reports.
Armed officers and police dogs were on guard outside the West Kowloon Law Courts. The landmark trial of former media tycoon Jimmy Lai resumed today after a break during the Christmas and New Year holidays. A clerk read out the 3 national security charges, 2 counts of conspiring to collude with foreign forces and a count of publishing seditious materials. Lai, dressed in a white shirt and a blue blazer, stood in the dock and replied not guilty to all 3 charges. Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions Anthony Zhao, representing the prosecution, said in an opening statement that the 76-year-old is a well-known media tycoon and a democracy advocate of Hong Kong. The prosecution said Lai and other senior staff of Apple Daily conspired to collude with foreign forces to call for sanctions against China and the SAR during the 2019 protests. Between April 1, 2019 and June 24, 2021, Lai published 161 articles with the suspected intention of sedition. 31 articles were published after the national security law came into force, asking the United States to sanction the Hong Kong SAR government and the central government. Lai began contacting certain overseas individuals, including the then U.S. Vice President and Secretary of State, in June 2019. In a July 2019 interview in the U.S., Lai said Hong Kong needs the support of Americans because of the 2 places share the same values. Lai also suggested that the U.S. send congressional members to the city as a sign of support. The prosecution said Lai had colluded with his assistant Mark Simon to persuade countries, including the US, Japan and New Zealand, to discuss sanction plans after the national security law was implemented. This photo of Lai and former Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives Nancy Pelosi was shown in court as evidence. The trial will resume on Wednesday, when the prosecution will carry on with the opening statement. Mimo Singhai, TVB News.
The government has addressed the situation involving mainland tourists being stuck in long queues waiting for public transport overnight after New Year's Eve celebrations in the city. The government said both the flow of people and vehicles exceeded expectations. Authorities said they will set up cross-department mechanisms to handle large-scale events, as well as extend train service hours at the border to avoid similar scenarios from unfolding again. Timothy Lee tells us more.
The start of 2024 was a frustrating time for some mainland tourists in the city. Large numbers of mainland tourists departing from the SAR after New Year's celebrations were stuck in long queues across the city in the early hours of yesterday. In Mong Kok, some queued for hours for transport to bring them to Huanggang Port. Those who did not want to queue rested at MTR stations. Earlier today, senior officials, including Chief Secretary for Administration Eric Chan and Secretary for Security Chris Tang, addressed the issue. They said the long waiting time was caused by heavy traffic congestion in Lok Ma Chau between midnight and 6 a.m., when more than 1,500 vehicles tried to cross the border. Eric Chan noted the traffic jam extended all the way to Santon Highway, resulting in many northbound buses failing to complete their journey. This, as Secretary of Culture, Sports and Tourism Kevin Yeung stressed the government will take action to improve the traveling experience for tourists in the future.
Hong Kong remains to be a very welcomed tourist spots for the mainland tourists. We learn from this time, the experience, and we are taking new measures. So we will take all we can and spend our efforts to make sure that we try to make sure that our mainland tourists, if they decided to return to the mainland after some of the major events, then the arrangement will be more satisfactory this time.
Currently, several roads are being repaired near the Huanggang port, and vehicles nearby are required to slow down. This Shenzhen resident said vehicles can barely move at the traffic light. Some lawmakers criticized the situation near the border. Lawmaker Dominic Lee said the image of Hong Kong as a tourism hub has been seriously damaged. The government announced it will hold high-level meetings prior to large-scale events to coordinate traffic in the future, as well as extend cross-border service times to 24 hours. They will also discuss extending train service hours at the border with mainland authorities. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Still ahead, locally, the taxi trade proposes a fare increase. And police arrest a man on suspicion of sexually assaulting 5 teenage girls in Tin Shui Wai and Tuen Mun. Back locally, the taxi sector has proposed a rise in flag-down fares by $5 to $32, hopefully within the first quarter. Under the new proposal, urban taxis' flag fall will be increased from $27 to $32. New Territories taxis' flag fall will increase by $4.50 from $23.50 to $28, a rise of about 20%. Taxi drivers said costs such as maintenance and insurance have been rising a lot, and fares are well behind such increases. Police have arrested a man on suspicion of sexually assaulting 5 teenage girls. The 27-year-old man, surnamed Lau, was apprehended in Tin Shui Wai at around 9 a.m. He was suspected of sexually assaulting 5 girls between the ages of 13 and 16 in Tin Shui Wai and Tuen Mun. His activities are believed to have taken place between last December and this month. Authorities stressed they will arrange for more officers to patrol the city to clamp down on indecent behavior. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.